Channel, Silent Revenge. Duration target, 28 to 32 minutes. Voice, ENGB Ryan Neural, Edge TTS, male British storyteller. POV, third-person intimate, told from a calm narrator looking at Claire. Source Rotero, Day 33, PDF chronogrammer. Recurring characters, Claire Bennett, 38, James Bennett, 41, the contact, initial only, L. Setting, Highbury, North London, early March 2026, the week after Claire put James out. Climax type, cold, Claire watches him delete it, then asks for the phone. Tier, Cinematic V2, tilde 30 shots, character Bible mandatory. People imagine betrayal as a single, dramatic event. A door pushed open at the wrong moment. A name shouted across a kitchen. A confession. It is rarely any of those things. Most of the time, betrayal is a small movement. A flick of the wrist. The half-second pause before someone passes you the phone they have been holding all evening. The way a man's thumb slides, just slightly, across his own screen as you walk into the room, to do something he does not want you to see him do. Claire Bennett had already learned, in the long winter of her marriage to James, that small movements were the only honest things left in their house. What she did not yet know, on the cold Sunday afternoon in early March when she sat across from him in the kitchen of the flat he had taken in Camden, the flat she had asked him to move into by the end of the month, 3 weeks earlier, was that there was one last small movement she needed to see. She needed to see him delete the name. This is the story of the afternoon Claire watched her husband's thumb hover for a full second over a contact in his phone, and she understood, finally, exactly how a man behaves when he believes the woman in front of him is no longer paying attention. She was, of course, paying very close attention indeed. The flat in Camden had been let on a 6-month lease, fully furnished, with someone else's books on the shelves. Claire had not been to it before that Sunday. James had asked her to come. He had said, in a voicemail he left on her phone on the Friday evening, that there were a few things he wanted to discuss before the solicitors did. He had said, in the careful voice he used when he believed he was being conciliatory, that he wanted to do this properly. Claire had listened to the voicemail twice in the kitchen of the Highbury house. The boiler had ticked in the wall. The plane tree at the bottom of the garden had been bare against a flat grey sky. She had said, into her own phone, "I'll come at 3 on Sunday. I'll stay for 1 cup of tea." She had meant it. The flat was on the 2nd floor of a Victorian conversion off Camden Road. There was a small entry hall with a single radiator and a single coat hook. There was a sitting room with a navy sofa nobody had chosen and a bookshelf of paperback somebody else had read. There was a kitchen that smelled, faintly, of new paint and a brand of lemon cleaner James did not buy. When James opened the door in his charcoal cashmere jumper and dark indigo jeans, he looked, for a moment, like a man at the door of a house he had once lived in. The polite, slightly distant smile of a guest in his own life. He said, "Claire." He said, "Come in." He kissed the side of her head, once, very briefly, the way a man kisses a sister he has not seen in a year. He took her camel wool coat. He hung it on the single hook in the entry hall. She walked into the sitting room. She sat down on the navy sofa nobody had chosen. He put the kettle on in the kitchen. She heard him open a cupboard, take down 2 mugs, drop 2 tea bags into them, pour the boiled water. She heard him stir, tap each spoon twice on the lip of the mug, set the spoons down on the worktop. He had always tapped twice. 14 years. He came in carrying both mugs. He put hers on the small wooden coffee table between them. He sat down in the armchair opposite her, not next to her, which was a thing she had not, perhaps, expected. His phone was on the arm of the chair. It was face up. It was, she thought, with a kind of cold and almost academic interest, the first time in 9 months she had seen the screen of his phone face up in a room with her in it. He had become, in the week since the receipt and the green notebook and the conversation across the kitchen island, a man who had nothing left to flip. That, she would understand later, was the small mistake at the center of the afternoon. He had not yet realized that nothing left to flip is not the same thing as nothing left to hide. For the first 10 minutes, they spoke about practical things. He told her about the lease, about a clause involving the gas boiler, about a payment he had made into the joint account on the Friday and one he intended to make on the following Tuesday. He spoke in the slightly elevated, slightly formal voice he used when he was trying to demonstrate that he was being responsible, the voice of a man performing competence for a person whose opinion he could no longer take for granted. Claire listened. She drank her tea. She did not look at his phone. She had, in fact, made a small private promise to herself, on the Underground on the way to Camden, that she would not look at his phone. This was no longer her business. The phone had been her business for 9 months, in the kitchen of the house in Highbury, with the green notebook and the dates penciled in. It was not her business anymore. The phone was face up on the arm of his chair. The screen lit up once, briefly, halfway through his explanation of the gas boiler clause. James glanced at it without picking it up. He did not turn it over. She kept her eyes on her tea. He talked about the carpet at the top of the stairs, which had been worrying him in case the new tenants noticed before the surveyor did. He talked about a small repair to the boiler that he had paid for in February and that she might find on the statement and not recognize. He talked about the fact that he was, in his own way, sorry, the careful, professional, loyally in his own way, which she had heard him deploy in client meetings in the early years of their marriage when he was trying to soften a position without giving any actual ground. She nodded at the appropriate places. She drank half her tea. The phone lit up again. This time longer. This time twice in succession. James glanced at it. The polite mask he had been wearing tightened, just at the corner of his mouth. It was a very small tightening, the kind of micro-expression she had spent 9 months training herself to read in him. He did not turn the phone over. He had no instinct left for the gesture in front of her, he believed it was no longer required. What he did instead was, very slowly, very casually, slide his right hand from his lap to the arm of the chair, and pick up the phone. He held it angled towards himself. His thumb moved. Claire watched him over the rim of her cup. She watched him for the precise length of time it took her to swallow one mouthful of Earl Grey tea. Then she set the cup down on the coffee table, very gently, so that there was no sound, and she said, in a voice that surprised her with how level it was, "Don't delete it. There is a particular silence that exists only inside the second after a person has been caught doing something they believed was invisible. It is not loud. It is not embarrassed. It is not, at first, ashamed. It is, instead, a silence in which the muscles of the face freeze in the precise configuration they had been arranged in to perform a different kind of moment, the polite, conciliatory, let us do this properly configuration, and the mind behind them tries, very rapidly, to recalibrate to the kind of moment that has just begun. James Bennett held that silence for slightly under a second. His thumb did not finish its movement. His expression did not, immediately, change. He was, for that single second, a man in 2 states at once, half still in the last 10 minutes of polite tea, half already in the next 10 minutes of something else, and the seam between the two was visible in the very slight tightening of the muscles around his eyes. Then he said, with the careful neutrality of a partner at a meeting, "Sorry?" Claire said, very gently, "Don't delete the contact, James. I would like to see who you were about to delete." She did not raise her voice. She did not lean forward. She did not put down her tea any harder than she had already put it down. She simply said the sentence in the tone of a research librarian asking to see a citation. James, very slowly, lowered the phone. He looked at her over it. He had the cool grey-blue eyes she had known for 19 years, the small vertical scar above his right eyebrow she had once kissed on a beach in Crete the summer they were 31. He had the face of the man she had married. He had also, she could see now, the face of a man trying to decide which version of himself was going to speak next. He said, "Claire, this is." She said, "I know." She said, "I know exactly what this is." She said, "Pass me the phone." For a second, she thought he was going to refuse. She had thought, many times, in the 9 months of the green notebook, about the moment he would refuse. She had imagined it. She had drafted, in her head, the sentences she would say to him if he did. She had a small calm version of herself ready for that scenario. He did not refuse. He set the phone down very carefully on the wooden coffee table, screen up, between her cooling tea and his own untouched cup. He pushed it, with the back of his fingers, the last 2 inches towards her side of the table. He said, "I was about to clear out an old contact. That's all." She said nothing. She picked up the phone. The screen had gone dark while he had been holding it. She lifted it, briefly, to her face. The flat in Camden was quiet enough that she heard the small, distant click of his throat as he swallowed. His phone unlocked, of course, with her face. She had, 14 years ago, set up the Face ID on his iPhone for him when he had been frightened of the new technology. They had never, in 14 years, removed her face from the recognized list. Even after the receipt. Even after the boxes she had helped him pack into the back of the Audi 3 weeks before. He had not removed her face. He had not, in fact, thought to. He was, she understood now, a man who continued to believe that the small administrative truths of a marriage would adjust themselves on their own. The home screen came up. He had been in his contacts. The contact he had been about to delete was at the top of the screen, highlighted in pale blue, the red delete contact button visible at the bottom, his thumb's hesitation captured in the unfinished gesture. The contact was called, simply, L. There was no surname. There was no profile photograph. There was only the single capital letter, sitting on the top line of the alphabet of his life, and the long history of messages threaded beneath it that Claire could see, even from the contact card, had run from a Monday in May to the previous afternoon. The previous afternoon. She did not say anything yet. She tapped, with one careful finger, into the message thread. She read. For 7 minutes, on the navy sofa in the flat in Camden, with her tea cooling on the coffee table and her husband sitting opposite her in his charcoal cashmere jumper, Claire Bennett read 9 months of text messages between her husband and a woman called L. She did not scroll quickly. She read at the speed at which she read citations, which was the speed of a person who knew that every word might matter and that quick reading was a form of kindness she could not afford herself today. She read messages from a Monday in May, when the woman had told James she missed his cologne. She read messages from a Tuesday in June, when he had told the woman that his wife had stopped looking him in the eye at breakfast, which was untrue, Claire noted with a small administrative flicker of pain, because Claire had been looking him in the eye every morning of June, and the only reason he had noticed differently was that he had been looking at the woman called L. She read messages from a Sunday in August, when James had told the woman he was tired, in a way he had never told Claire he was tired in 14 years. She read messages from December that arranged a hotel in Marylebone for the 2nd of January. She read messages from January that arranged a hotel in Marylebone for the 14th of January. She read messages from February that no longer needed to arrange hotels at all, because Claire had asked him to leave the house in Highbury, and the woman called Elle now had what she had been quietly arranging, in tiny fragments, for 9 months, the husband alone, in a flat in Camden, with no wife in the next room. She read the messages from the previous afternoon. The previous afternoon, the woman called Elle had written, "I'm tired of being a letter." The previous afternoon, James had written back, "I'll fix it soon." The previous afternoon, the woman called Elle had written, "Then start by deleting her name." Claire looked up from the phone. She looked at her husband. She said, very quietly, "She wanted you to delete me." James did not answer. She said, "And you were about to delete her instead. Just before I came over. To make it tidy for me. So that when I asked, you could say there had been someone, briefly, but it was over now." She said. This was the gesture, James. The very last one. "You were going to delete her name out of the address book of your life 2 minutes before I walked in, and then you were going to sit across from me with that calm, sad, lawyerly face, and you were going to tell me that you had ended it." She looked at the phone screen one more time. The pale blue highlight on the contact called L. The unfinished gesture. The red delete contact button still hovering, untapped. She tapped cancel. The contact remained. She set the phone down on the coffee table between them, exactly in the spot where he had pushed it towards her. She said, "I would like you to keep her name in your phone, James. I would like you to keep all 9 months of her in your phone. I would like you to look at her name every time you unlock that screen for the rest of your life, and remember that the woman who finally caught you was the one who asked you not to delete her." She stood up. She picked up her camel wool coat from the single hook in the entry hall. She did not slam the door. She walked, very calmly, down the stone steps of the Victorian conversion, past the bin set out neatly for Monday morning, to the corner of Camden Road. The afternoon was already beginning to dim, as March afternoons in London do, in a way that feels less like sunset than like the slow lowering of a lid. She did not cry on the walk to Camden Town Station. She did not, in fact, cry on the Northern Line back to King's Cross, or on the Victoria Line back to Highbury and Islington. She did not cry walking down the wet familiar pavements of Highbury Park in the gathering cold. She let herself into the house she had lived in for 14 years, which was now hers alone. She put the kettle on. She took down a single mug. She dropped a single tea bag into it. She poured the boiled water. She stirred. She tapped the spoon twice on the lip of the mug, the way she had, of course, always done, long before James had picked up the same gesture from her in the early years and then quietly carried it with him into the kitchen of a flat in Camden. She took the mug into the sitting room. She sat down on the sofa where, 14 years before, she and James Bennett had argued, very gently, over what color to paint the walls. She did not cry. She thought, with a kind of cold and steady tenderness, about the woman called Elle, whoever she was, sitting in some other flat, in some other part of the city, waiting for a message that would not, today, contain the news she had asked for. The news that the wife had been deleted. Claire understood now, more clearly than she had understood it on any of the previous afternoons of her marriage, that there had been 3 of them in the marriage all along. That this was not, as the joke went, a bit crowded. It was the precise mathematics of betrayal. 2 who knew. 1 who was being managed. She had stopped, at some point in the last 6 months, being the one who was being managed. She had become the one who knew. And now, because of a single small movement in a flat in Camden, a thumb, a contact, a hesitation she had been close enough to see, she had become, for the first time in 19 years of knowing James Bennett, the one with the full and unadjustable record. She drank her tea. The boiler ticked once in the wall. That night, very late, after the street lamps on Highbury Park had come on and the house had grown quiet around her, Claire sat at the kitchen table and opened her laptop. She did not write to James. She did not write to the woman called Elle. She wrote, instead, a short calm email to her solicitor in Lincoln's Inn, a woman called Helen Whitcomb whom Claire had spoken with twice already, very briefly, in the 2nd week of February. The email had a subject line. The subject line was, "Update, additional evidence." In the body of the email, Claire wrote, "Dear Helen, following our last call, I have today obtained further evidence of the duration and conduct of the affair, including direct text correspondence over a 9-month period. I will forward photographs of the relevant messages tomorrow morning. The other party, known to my husband as Elle, has, as recently as yesterday, been pressuring my husband to remove my name from his contact list. He attempted to do so this afternoon in my presence and was unsuccessful. I would like to revise our position on the financial settlement accordingly. Best wishes. Claire." She read the email back twice. She added one more sentence at the end, in the smallest neat hand of her professional life. "I am no longer interested in being conciliatory." She pressed send. The boiler ticked once in the wall. 3 days later, on a Wednesday morning, in a meeting room on the 2nd floor